Victoria Sterling's palm cracked across Maya Thompson's face with enough force to turn heads throughout the entire first-class cabin. The mother stumbled backward, clutching her 6-month-old baby tighter against her chest as tears sprang to her eyes. And then came the sound that would haunt everyone who witnessed it. Applause. Passengers were actually clapping for the flight attendant who had just assaulted a woman holding an infant. Victoria straightened her uniform and smiled at her audience, completely unaware that she had just slapped the wife of the man who owned every single aircraft in the Skywave fleet. In 5 minutes, her entire world would collapse. Before we continue, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow this incredible story to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from so we can see how far this story travels. Victoria Sterling's hand was still tingling from the impact when she turned to face the first-class cabin with a look of pure triumph. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice dripping with theatrical authority, "I apologize for the disruption. Some people simply don't understand appropriate travel etiquette." Maya Thompson sat frozen in seat 2A, her left cheek burning crimson. 6-month-old Zoe was pressed against her chest, crying harder now from the violence that had shattered the cabin's calm. Eleanor Whitmore, the elderly woman in pearls across the aisle, leaned toward her seatmate. "Finally, someone with backbone." "Standards have completely collapsed," her companion agreed. James Crawford, the investment banker in 3C, nodded vigorously. "Thank God someone is maintaining order. These people always think they can do whatever they want." These people. Maya heard every word. She felt the weight of a dozen phones pointing at her, recording what they assumed was justified discipline. But she didn't move. She didn't cry out. She didn't demand a supervisor. She adjusted Zoe's blanket with trembling hands and began to gently bounce her daughter. Victoria stepped closer, emboldened by the support. "That's better. See, a firm hand is all it takes." "My ticket shows seat 2A, Maya said quietly. "I paid for first-class service." Victoria's laugh cut through the cabin. "Honey, I don't care what scam you pulled to get that ticket. People like you always try to upgrade illegally." "People like you." "I've been working these routes for 15 years, Victoria continued. "I know every trick in the book." Maya's phone buzzed. The screen displayed Skywave Airways Executive Office. She declined the call. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Who's calling you your baby daddy? He's not going to save you from federal aviation regulations." James Crawford chuckled. Eleanor Whitmore smiled approvingly. In seat 5B, 19-year-old Sophia Martinez had her phone pointed directly at Maya. Her TikTok livestream had started the moment she heard raised voices. "Y'all, this is insane," Sophia whispered to her audience. "This mom brought a screaming baby to first class, and the flight attendant just slapped her." Her viewer count climbed. 800, 1,200, 3,000. Comments flooded in. "Finally, someone disciplining bad parents. Flight attendant is a hero. That mom looks entitled AF." Victoria noticed the cameras and stood straighter. "Ma'am, if you cannot manage your child appropriately, I have every right to request your removal." "My daughter cried for 3 minutes due to cabin pressure," Maya replied calmly. "That's normal for infants." "Excuse me, are you arguing with me? I'm stating facts." Victoria pulled out her radio. "Captain Hayes, code yellow in first class. Disruptive passenger with infant refusing to comply." The radio crackled immediately. "Copy that, Victoria. How do you want to proceed?" "Recommending immediate removal. She's delayed us 8 minutes." Maya glanced at her phone again. 14 minutes until departure. A text notification read, "Corporate merger announcement scheduled 2:00 p.m. EST. All systems ready." She tucked the phone away. Captain Robert Hayes' voice returned over the radio. "Ground security is standing by." Victoria smiled triumphantly at Maya. "Last chance to leave with dignity." "I'd suggest verifying my passenger status first." "Verify what your fake gold status, your stolen credit card." Maya's phone buzzed again. "Skywave corporate emergency line." She declined it. "Stop ignoring your phone," Victoria snapped. "It's rude." "But rudeness seems to be your pattern." Sophia's livestream hit 8,000 viewers. Her commentary shifted slightly. "Y'all, something's weird. This mom is way too calm." Comments began to change. "Why isn't she freaking out?" "Something's not right here." "Flight attendant seems unhinged." Jason Miller, the aviation blogger in seat 7A, had opened his laptop. He'd been covering airline stories for 7 years, and his instincts were screaming. He typed rapidly. Witnessing something strange on Skywave 631. Passenger shows zero distress. Too composed. Stand by for updates. Industry insiders began following the thread within minutes. 2 security officers appeared at the cabin entrance. "Officers," Victoria announced with satisfaction, "please escort this passenger and her infant off the aircraft." The lead officer approached Maya. "Ma'am, we need you to gather your belongings. Before you proceed," Maya said clearly, "I request verification of my passenger status. Standard protocol requires identity confirmation before forcible removal." "The crew assessed you as disruptive. That's sufficient. Is 30 seconds of verification worth risking a mistake?" The officer hesitated. Victoria stepped forward aggressively. "Don't listen to her. This is exactly what people like her do. They manipulate the system." Captain Hayes emerged from the cockpit. 51 years old, 20 years of flying, absolute trust in his crew. "What's the holdup?" "Passenger requesting identity verification, Captain." "Denied. Crew assessed her as disruptive. End of discussion." Maya looked at him steadily. "Captain Hayes, I've given you multiple opportunities to verify my identity before this becomes irreversible." Something in her phrasing made him pause. The word irreversible carried weight he couldn't quite understand. "Lady, I don't know who you think you are, but on this aircraft, my word is law. I understand that's what you believe." Her response wasn't aggressive. It wasn't submissive. It was knowing. Victoria sensed her control slipping. She needed to regain the narrative. "This passenger struck me when I approached her," she announced loudly to the cabin. "I was physically assaulted." Silence. Then Sophia's voice cut through. "That's a lie." Every head turned. "I have the whole thing on video. You slapped her. She never touched you." Victoria's face contorted. "You're lying. You're probably her friend." "I've never met this woman. I started recording because I thought she was the problem, but I have proof of what actually happened." The cabin atmosphere shifted. Passengers who had been nodding along with Victoria began exchanging uncertain glances. James Crawford slowly lowered his phone. He hadn't actually watched what he was recording. Eleanor Whitmore clutched her pearls. Surely the flight attendant wouldn't lie about assault. "She just did," Sophia replied, "and I can prove it." From seat 4D, a woman in civilian clothes stood up. She moved with quiet authority that immediately commanded attention. "Captain Hayes," she said, producing credentials. "I'm Federal Air Marshal Elena Reyes. I've been observing this situation since it began." Victoria's face went pale. "Physical assault of a passenger is a federal offense," Elena continued. "So is false accusation of assault. I witnessed both." Hayes turned to his security officers. "Verify the passenger's identity. Now." "Captain," Victoria protested. "You can't just—" "I can, and I am." The lead officer pulled out a tablet and approached Maya. "Ma'am, I need to scan your boarding pass and ID." Maya handed them over with her free hand still cradling Zoe. "Thank you for taking the time to verify." The officer scanned the documents. 10 seconds passed, 20, 30. His expression changed. Confusion, then alarm, then fear. "Captain, you need to see this." Hayes took the tablet. The color drained from his face completely. "That's impossible," he breathed. "What?" Victoria demanded. "What does it say?" Hayes didn't answer. He was staring at the gold status executive clearance code at the name connected to Skywave's highest corporate accounts. "Captain?" Victoria's voice rose with desperation. "Tell me what's happening." Maya allowed herself the faintest smile. "Ms. Sterling, you're about to learn exactly who I am." Her phone rang again. This time she answered. "Hello, Marcus. Yes, I'm still on the plane. Yes, there's been an incident." She paused. "I'm putting you on speaker. Some people here need to hear this." The click of the speakerphone seemed to freeze time itself. "Maya," a deep voice filled the cabin. "Are you and Zoe safe? We're physically fine, but I was slapped by a flight attendant while holding our daughter, called racial names, accused of stealing my ticket, and nearly removed without verification." Silence on the line. Then the voice returned cold as ice. "This is Marcus Thompson, Chief Executive Officer of Skywave Airlines. I want Captain Hayes on the line, now." Victoria Sterling stopped breathing. The woman she had slapped. The woman she had called names. The woman she had tried to arrest. Was the wife of the man who owned the entire airline. Sophia's live stream exploded past 20,000 viewers. "Holy crap," she whispered. "She's the CEO's wife. The flight attendant slapped the owner's wife." James Crawford's phone slipped from his fingers. Eleanor Whitmore pressed her hand against her chest. Captain Hayes stood paralyzed, the tablet still in his hands, his career flashing before his eyes. "Captain Hayes," Marcus Thompson's voice cut through the stunned silence. "I'm watching a live stream of my wife being assaulted by your crew. Explain yourself." Hayes opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "I'm watching video of my wife being slapped while holding our daughter. I'm hearing your flight attendant make comments about her baby daddy. I'm seeing security preparing to drag her off the plane." His voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "Which part of that is a misunderstanding, Captain?" Victoria finally found her voice. "Sir, there was a misunderstanding. The passenger was disruptive. I was following protocol." "Protocol?" Marcus cut her off. "Is it protocol to physically assault passengers? Is it protocol to make racist comments? Is it protocol to lie about being attacked?" "I didn't lie, Air Marshal Reyes is standing right there. She witnessed everything. Are you calling a federal officer a liar?" Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No words came. "Let me be crystal clear about what happens next," Marcus continued. "Flight attendant Victoria Sterling, you are terminated, effective immediately." Victoria staggered backward as if physically struck. "Captain Robert Hayes, you are suspended pending investigation. You will not touch the controls of any Skywave aircraft again." Hayes gripped the seat back to steady himself. "Both of you will remain on that plane until federal investigators arrive. You're facing assault charges." Sophia zoomed in on Victoria's face. Tears were streaming down the flight attendant's cheeks, her carefully constructed world collapsing in real time. 20,000 people are watching this, Marcus said. "By the time this plane lands, it will be 20 million. Every person who witnessed my wife's humiliation will also witness your accountability." He paused. "Maya, sweetheart, are you sure you want to stay on this flight? The corporate jet is ready." Maya looked around the cabin, at Victoria, now sobbing, at Hayes, pale as death, at the passengers who had applauded her humiliation just minutes ago. "I'll stay on this flight, Marcus. I need to finish what I started." "I understand. I'll see you in Atlanta. Federal officers are already en route." "I love you. I love you too. Both of you." The call ended. The cabin remained frozen in absolute silence. Maya kissed Zoe's forehead gently. The baby had stopped crying, seemingly aware that something monumental had just occurred. Victoria collapsed into the nearest seat, her face buried in her hands. 15 years of building her career, her authority, her identity, gone in 5 minutes. James Crawford stood abruptly. "I need to use the restroom." He pushed past other passengers desperate to escape the scene of his complicity. Eleanor Whitmore stared at her hands, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Her approving whispers had been recorded. Her "finally someone with backbone" was now evidence. Sophia kept her camera steady, though her hands were shaking. "Y'all, I don't even know what to say. This is the most insane thing I've ever witnessed." Her viewer count hit 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. Comments exploded faster than anyone could read. This is what accountability looks like. They were going to drag a mom and baby off for nothing. The flight attendant lied about being assaulted. Every passenger who clapped should be ashamed. Jason Miller was typing furiously on his aviation forum. "Skywave stock will crash tomorrow. This is the biggest PR disaster I've ever witnessed live." Air Marshal Elena Reyes approached Maya quietly. "Mrs. Thompson, I apologize for not intervening sooner. I should have stopped this before it escalated." "You requested verification when no one else would," Maya replied. "That matters." Thomas Burke, the ground supervisor, appeared at the cabin entrance. His face was ashen as he took in the scene. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, voice trembling, "I've been instructed to ensure your complete comfort for the remainder of your journey, whatever you need." "What I need," Maya said clearly, "is for this to never happen to another passenger. Not everyone has a CEO husband to fire the people who humiliate them." Her words hung in the air, a powerful reminder that her experience wasn't unique. It was just documented. A new captain appeared behind Burke. "I'm Captain Michael Landry. I'll be taking command of this flight." He nodded respectfully toward Maya. "Mrs. Thompson, it's an honor to have you aboard." The contrast was stark. The same airline, the same first-class cabin, completely different treatment once they knew who she was. Victoria looked up from her hands, mascara streaking her cheeks. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know who she was." Maya turned to face her directly. "Would it have mattered, Ms. Sterling? Would you have treated me differently if I were just another black mother without connections? Or is it only my husband's title that makes my dignity worth respecting?" Victoria had no answer. "That's what I thought." Maya turned back to face forward, holding Zoe close. The baby reached up and touched her mother's still-burning cheek with tiny fingers. "It's okay, sweetheart," Maya whispered. "Mommy's okay." But even as she spoke, the words "a single tear" finally escaped down her cheek. The public composure had held. The dignity had remained intact. The accountability had been achieved. But the hurt was real. The humiliation had happened. And no amount of corporate power could erase those 5 minutes when she had been nothing more than a black woman who didn't belong. Sophia captured that tear on her live stream. No commentary. Just the image of a mother holding her baby, finally allowing herself one moment of vulnerability after holding everything together through an ordeal no one should have to face. The viewer count hit 75,000, and the story was only beginning. Federal officers boarded the aircraft 12 minutes later. Victoria Sterling was escorted off in handcuffs, her tearful protests falling on deaf ears. Captain Hayes followed his captain's wings, already confiscated his 20-year career ending in disgrace. As they passed Maya's seat, Victoria stopped. The officers tried to move her forward, but she resisted for just a moment. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." Maya looked at her steadily. "Your apology is 15 years too late, Ms. Sterling. I'm not the first person you've treated this way. I'm just the first one who could do something about it." Victoria's face crumbled as the officers led her away. James Crawford had returned from his bathroom escape attempt only to find federal officers taking statements from passengers. His earlier supportive comments had been recorded from multiple angles. "Sir," an officer said, approaching him, "we'd like to ask you some questions about your interaction with the crew during this incident." Crawford's face went gray. I didn't actually do anything. I just agreed with—" "Your statements are on video, sir. We have questions." Eleanor Whitmore was weeping quietly in her seat. Her granddaughter had already texted her. The video was everywhere. Her face was recognizable. Her words were quoted. "Grandma, how could you—" She had no answer. Sophia finally lowered her phone after nearly an hour of continuous streaming. Her account had gained 50,000 followers. Interview requests were flooding her inbox from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and a dozen other outlets. She approached Maya hesitantly. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Sophia. I've been streaming this whole thing." Maya looked up at her. "I just wanted to say, I started recording because I thought you were the problem. I was wrong. I'm sorry." Maya nodded slowly. "You kept recording even when you realized the truth. That took courage. It's going to change things, isn't it? This video? I hope so. But change requires more than one viral video. It requires people choosing differently every day." Thomas Burke returned with an update. "Mrs. Thompson, I've just received word that Skywave has issued an emergency statement. They're acknowledging the incident and announcing immediate policy changes." "What kind of changes?" "Mandatory identity verification before any passenger removal. Body cameras for crew interactions. Independent review board for discrimination complaints. It's comprehensive." Maya closed her eyes briefly. This was what she had wanted. Not revenge, not humiliation, change. And Victoria Sterling's employment history. Burke hesitated. 3 previous complaints from minority passengers, all settled quietly, all buried. Not anymore. "No, ma'am, not anymore." Captain Landry's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the extended delay. We'll be departing shortly. On behalf of Skywave Airlines, I want to express our deepest regret for the incident that occurred in this cabin today. It does not represent who we are or who we aspire to be." Maya listened to the carefully crafted words and wondered how many times similar words had been spoken after similar incidents. How many apologies had been issued while the underlying problems remained unaddressed. But this time would be different. This time, 75,000 people had watched it happen live. This time, the CEO's wife had been the target. This time, there would be accountability. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Landed in Atlanta. Press conference scheduled for 6 p.m. "Are you sure you're okay?" She typed back. "I will be. See you soon." As the aircraft finally pushed back from the gate nearly 90 minutes behind schedule, Maya looked out the window at the Chicago skyline receding in the distance. Zoe had fallen asleep against her chest, exhausted from the ordeal. She was too young to understand or remember. But Maya would remember. Every slap, every insult, every approving nod from passengers who saw nothing wrong with her humiliation. And she would make sure the world remembered too. The new flight attendants moved through the cabin with exaggerated politeness, offering drinks and snacks with trembling hands. They knew who was sitting in 2A. Everyone knew now. Jason Miller caught Maya's eye from across the cabin and nodded respectfully. His industry coverage of this incident would shape how the aviation world responded for years to come. Elena Reyes remained in her seat, already drafting her federal report. Her testimony would be crucial in the legal proceedings to come. And somewhere in a holding cell at O'Hare International Airport, Victoria Sterling was learning that 15 years of authority meant nothing when you chose to wield it against the wrong person. The aircraft lifted off into the afternoon sky, carrying its passengers toward Atlanta and toward a future where this story would be told and retold as a cautionary tale about power prejudice and the devastating consequences of assumption. Maya watched the clouds pass beneath them and allowed herself one more moment of private emotion. Then she straightened her shoulders, kissed her daughter's forehead, and prepared for what came next. The reckoning was just beginning. The aircraft had barely reached cruising altitude when Marcus Thompson's second call came through the cabin speakers. Thomas Burke had connected the CEO directly to the intercom system at Marcus's demand, and now every passenger on Flight 631 could hear what was about to unfold. "I want a full accounting," Marcus's voice thundered through the speakers. "Every crew member who witnessed what happened and did nothing. Every passenger who applauded my wife's assault. I want names." Captain Landry, the replacement pilot, responded carefully. "Mr. Thompson, we're compiling that information now. The live stream footage is being preserved as evidence." "Good. Because what happened on that aircraft wasn't just an attack on my wife. It was a systematic failure that I intend to dismantle piece by piece." Maya sat quietly in seat 2A. Zoe finally sleeping against her chest. She listened to her husband's controlled fury and felt a complex mixture of gratitude and exhaustion. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind raw emotion she was struggling to contain. Sophia Martinez had stopped live streaming out of respect, but her phone was still recording. Her viewer count had stabilized at 82,000, with millions more watching replays across every social media platform. "Mrs. Thompson," Sophia said softly, approaching Maya's seat. "My audience is asking if you're okay. Really okay, not just physically." Maya looked at the young woman who had inadvertently become her most important witness. "Tell them the truth. Tell them I'm hurt. Tell them I'm angry. Tell them that what happened to me happens every day to people who don't have cameras recording or powerful husbands waiting." Sophia nodded and turned her camera back on. "Y'all heard her. She's hurt. She's angry. And she wants you to know this isn't rare. This is reality for so many people." The comments section exploded with personal stories. Thousands of viewers sharing their own experiences of discrimination, of being judged by appearance, of being removed from spaces where they belonged. 37 minutes into the flight, Thomas Burke approached Maya with his tablet. "Mrs. Thompson, I need to show you something. It's about Victoria Sterling's employment history." Maya took the tablet and began reading. Her expression hardened with each line. "3 formal complaints in the past 5 years. Burke explained. "All from minority passengers, all involving similar accusations of discrimination and aggressive behavior, all quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements and financial compensation." And she was still working first-class routes. She was promoted twice during that period. Maya's hand tightened on the tablet. Who signed off on these settlements? Who decided she should keep flying? Burke hesitated. I don't have access to that information, ma'am. It would be in HR's confidential files. Get me those files. Ma'am, I don't have the authority. My husband owns this airline. I'm on the board of directors. Get me those files. Burke nodded and hurried away to make calls. Elena Reyes, the air marshal, had moved to a seat closer to Maya. Mrs. Thompson, I've submitted my preliminary report to the FAA. Victoria Sterling will never work in aviation again. Neither will Captain Hayes. That's not enough, Maya replied quietly. Firing 2 people doesn't fix a system that protected them for years. What would be enough? Maya looked at her directly. Transparency. Every complaint ever filed against Skywave crew members made public. Every settlement disclosed. Every passenger who was removed without proper verification contacted and compensated. That would be a start. Elena nodded slowly. That would be unprecedented in the industry. So was slapping the CEO's wife on camera. 45 minutes into the flight, James Crawford finally worked up the courage to approach Maya's seat. The investment banker who had so confidently supported Victoria Sterling's actions now looked like a man facing his own execution. Mrs. Thompson. He began, his voice cracking. I owe you an apology. My behavior was inexcusable. Maya regarded him coolly. Which part, Mr. Crawford? The part where you said these people always think they can do whatever they want, or the part where you laughed when she called my husband my baby daddy. Crawford flinched at hearing his own words repeated back to him. All of it. I was wrong about everything. You were comfortable being wrong. You assumed you knew who I was based on how I looked. You assumed I didn't belong here. You assumed the flight attendant was justified in assaulting me. I know. I'm sorry. What would you have done if my husband wasn't the CEO? If I was just another black mother being dragged off a plane? Would you have apologized then? Crawford couldn't meet her eyes. I don't know. That's the problem, Mr. Crawford. You don't know. You've never had to think about it because you've never been on the receiving end. She turned away from him, dismissing him without another word. Crawford retreated to his seat, his face burning with shame. Sophia had captured the entire exchange. Her viewers were flooding the comments with reactions. She absolutely destroyed him with facts. He's only sorry because he got caught. This is what accountability looks like. 1 hour into the flight, Maya's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but something made her answer. Mrs. Thompson, this is Rebecca Martinez. I was a passenger on a Skywave flight 3 years ago. Victoria Sterling had me removed because she said I was acting suspicious. I was reading a book in Arabic. Maya closed her eyes. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. They paid me $50,000 to stay quiet. But I've been watching the live stream and I can't stay quiet anymore. Would you be willing to speak publicly about what happened? Yes, I've already contacted a lawyer, and I'm not the only one. There are others reaching out to each other right now. We're organizing. Maya felt something shift in her chest. This was bigger than her individual experience. This was a movement forming in real time. Rebecca, I want to help. Whatever resources you need, legal support, media contacts, financial assistance. My husband and I will provide it. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. But what we really need is for people to believe us, for people to understand that this happens all the time. They're starting to understand. 80,000 people watched what happened to me. Millions more are watching the replays. They're seeing what we've always known. The call ended, but Maya knew it was just the beginning. Her phone was already buzzing with more incoming calls, more messages, more people reaching out to share their stories. 1 hour and 15 minutes into the flight, Thomas Burke returned with his tablet. His face was pale. Mrs. Thompson, I got access to the HR files. You need to see this. Maya took the tablet and began scrolling. What she found made her blood run cold. Victoria Sterling wasn't an isolated case. There were 17 other flight attendants with multiple discrimination complaints who were still actively employed. There were patterns of settlements, patterns of cover-ups, patterns of promotion, despite documented misconduct. This goes all the way to the top, Maya breathed. The VP of Human Resources signed off on every one of these settlements. David Chen, Burke confirmed. He's been with the company for 12 years. Not anymore. Maya dialed Marcus immediately. Did you know about David Chen? I'm finding out now, Marcus replied, his voice tight with anger. I've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Every executive who knew about this cover-up will be terminated. How many people knew Marcus? Silence on the line. How many? At least 7 senior executives were copied on the settlement documents. They all knew. They all stayed silent. Maya felt sick. The discrimination she had experienced wasn't a failure of one flight attendant. It was a corporate culture that had chosen profit over people, silence over justice, protection of the brand over protection of passengers. "Clean house," she said firmly. "All of them. I don't care how long they've been with the company or how valuable they think they are. Anyone who helped cover this up is gone." "Already done. The board is backing me completely. When the markets open tomorrow, we'll announce a complete restructuring of senior leadership. And the victims, the people who signed NDAs, we're releasing them from their agreements. Every settlement will be reviewed. Additional compensation will be offered. And we're setting up an independent review board to handle future complaints." Maya nodded, though Marcus couldn't see her. "That's a start. It's more than a start. By the time this is over, Skywave will be unrecognizable. The old way of doing things is finished." 1 hour and 30 minutes into the flight, the cabin crew approached Maya with visible nervousness. "Mrs. Thompson is there. Anything we can get for you? Anything at all?" Maya looked at the young flight attendant, barely out of training, terrified of making any wrong move. "What's your name?" "Jessica, ma'am. Jessica Williams." "Jessica, have you ever witnessed discrimination on a flight?" The young woman hesitated, glancing around, as if checking who might be listening. I'm not sure I should. You're not going to get in trouble for telling the truth, I promise you that." Jessica swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. I've seen it. Not like what happened today, but smaller things. Passengers being questioned about their tickets more than others. Crew members making comments about certain neighborhoods or certain names. It's everywhere." "And when you saw it, what did you do?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Nothing. I was afraid of losing my job. Victoria was senior crew. If I had reported her, she would have made my life hell. That fear is exactly what allows this to continue. People like Victoria Sterling count on silence. They count on everyone being too afraid to speak up. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. I should have done something. You can do something now. You can be part of the change. You can speak up when you see something wrong, knowing that the new leadership will support you instead of punishing you." Jessica nodded, wiping her eyes. "I will. I promise I will." 1 hour and 45 minutes into the flight, Eleanor Whitmore finally approached Maya's seat. The elderly woman's face was streaked with tears, her earlier superiority completely dissolved. "I can't stop thinking about what I said." Eleanor began, her voice trembling. "I called what that woman did backbone. I watched her slap you while you held your baby, and I approved." Maya watched her silently. "I'm 82 years old. I've spent my whole life thinking certain things about certain people. I never questioned it. I never had to question it." "What things, Mrs. Whitmore?" Eleanor flinched at the direct question. "That people who look like you don't belong in certain places. That if something bad happens to someone, they probably deserved it somehow. That people like me have earned what we have, and people like you—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "People like me, what? Haven't earned anything." Eleanor whispered the words, tasting like poison in her mouth. "That's what I thought. That's what I've always thought. And today I watched it play out exactly like that, and I applauded. Do you still think that—" Eleanor shook her head violently. "No, I don't know what I think anymore. Everything I believed just collapsed. You sat there with your baby, taking abuse with more dignity than I've ever shown anyone, and you turned out to be more important than everyone on this plane combined." "My importance shouldn't matter, Mrs. Whitmore. What if I wasn't the CEO's wife? Would my dignity be worth less?" No, it wouldn't. But I wouldn't have seen it that way this morning. This morning, I would have watched you get dragged off this plane and gone back to my magazine without a second thought. At least you're honest about it. I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't know how to change at my age, but I don't want to be that person." Maya studied the elderly woman for a long moment. "Change starts with exactly what you just did. Admitting the truth. Facing the ugliness inside yourself. Most people never get that far. Is it enough? It's a beginning." 2 hours into the flight, Captain Landry's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our initial descent into Atlanta. We expect to land in approximately 35 minutes. Maya looked out the window at the clouds below, her mind racing through everything that had happened and everything that was about to happen. The press conference, the board meeting, the public statements, the legal proceedings. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Media is gathered at the airport, hundreds of them. I'm bringing security to escort you and Zoe safely. She typed back, I don't want to hide. I want them to see us. Are you sure it's going to be intense? I've been through intense. I can handle cameras. I love you so much. I love you too. See you on the ground. Sophia approached one final time. Mrs. Thompson, my stream is ending when we land. Is there anything you want to say to everyone watching? Maya considered the question carefully. 86,000 people were still watching live. Millions more would watch the recording. Tell them that what happened to me was wrong, but it wasn't unique. Tell them that every day people face discrimination without cameras, without powerful advocates, without any hope of accountability. Tell them that if they've witnessed something wrong and stayed silent today, is the day to speak up. Tell them that change doesn't happen because one CEO fires some employees. Change happens when everyone decides that dignity isn't negotiable. She paused, looking directly into Sophia's camera. And tell them that if Victoria Sterling hadn't slapped me today, she would still be working tomorrow. She would still be discriminating against passengers who couldn't fight back. The only reason this is ending is because she happened to target someone with power. That's not justice. That's luck. Real justice means everyone is protected, not just the privileged few. Sophia nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for everything. Thank you for keeping your camera on. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I was part of the problem at the beginning. I assumed you were the troublemaker. I have to be part of the solution now. 2 hours and 20 minutes into the flight, the aircraft began its final approach. Maya could see the Atlanta skyline in the distance growing larger with each passing minute. Zoe woke up and began to fuss, reaching for her mother's face with tiny hands. Maya smiled and bounced her gently whispering words of comfort. Almost there, sweetheart. Daddy's waiting for us. The baby gurgled happily, completely unaware that her first flight had become a national incident, that her mother's composure under fire had inspired millions, that the woman who had slapped them was now facing federal charges. Zoe would never remember this day, but the world would never forget it. 2 hours and 30 minutes, the wheels touched down in Atlanta. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause, but this time it was different. This time, passengers were applauding Maya Thompson. James Crawford remained silent, his head bowed. Eleanor Whitmore clapped with tears streaming down her face. Sophia documented it all, her final frames showing the complicated humanity of everyone involved. As the aircraft taxied toward the gate, Thomas Burke approached one last time. Mrs. Thompson, your husband is waiting at the gate with a security team. The media presence is significant. How significant? Over 200 reporters and camera crews, plus thousands of supporters who showed up after seeing the live stream. Maya nodded slowly. She had known this moment was coming. The private ordeal was about to become completely public. Are you ready for this? Burke asked. Maya looked down at Zoe, at her daughter's innocent face, at the tiny fingers wrapped around her own. Then she looked up with steel in her eyes. I've been ready my whole life. The aircraft door opened, and the sounds of cameras and shouting voices flooded the cabin. Beyond the jetway, Maya could see Marcus waiting his tall frame, surrounded by security personnel, his face a mask of controlled emotion that she knew was hiding volcanic fury. She stood up, adjusted Zoe in her arms, and began walking toward her husband. Every passenger watched her go. The woman they had dismissed as disruptive, the woman they had judged on sight, the woman who had endured assault and humiliation without losing her dignity. She walked with her head high, her daughter secure against her chest, her future uncertain, but her resolve unshakable. The real fight was just beginning. Marcus Thompson caught Maya the moment she stepped off the jetway. His arms wrapped around her and Zoe with fierce protectiveness, and for the first time since Victoria Sterling's palm had connected with her cheek, Maya allowed herself to tremble. I've got you, Marcus whispered into her hair. I've got you both. It was worse than I told you on the phone, Maya said quietly, her voice cracking. The way they looked at me, the way they clapped when she hit me, like I was nothing. Marcus pulled back to look at her face, his eyes traveling to the faint red mark still visible on her cheek. His jaw tightened with barely controlled rage. She's going to prison, he said. Everyone who participated in this is going to face consequences. I promise you that. Zoe reached out and grabbed Marcus's finger, gurgling happily at the sight of her father. The innocent gesture broke something in both of them, a reminder of what had been at stake during those terrifying minutes on the plane. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson." A security officer interrupted. "The media is waiting. Over 200 outlets. We can take you through a private exit if you prefer." Maya straightened her shoulders. "No, we walk out the front." Marcus nodded. "Together." They moved through the airport, with security flanking them, the sounds of cameras and shouting voices growing louder with each step. When they finally emerged into the main terminal, the wall of flashbulbs was blinding. "Mrs. Thompson, can you tell us what happened on that flight?" "Mr. Thompson, what actions is Skywave taking?" "Maya, how are you feeling right now?" "Is it true the flight attendant has been arrested?" The questions came from every direction, overlapping into chaos. Marcus held up his hand for silence, and gradually the noise subsided. "We will hold a formal press conference at 6 o'clock this evening," Marcus announced. "At that time, we will provide a complete account of what occurred and outline the comprehensive changes being implemented at Skywave Airlines. Until then, I ask that you respect my family's need for privacy." "Just one question," a reporter shouted. "Mrs. Thompson, do you believe what happened to you was racially motivated?" Maya stepped forward before Marcus could stop her. The crowd fell silent. "A flight attendant slapped me across the face while I was holding my 6-month-old daughter. She called my husband my baby daddy. She accused me of stealing my ticket because, in her words, people like me don't belong in first class. She then lied and claimed I had assaulted her." Maya paused, letting her words sink in. "What do you think motivated that?" The silence that followed was deafening. Then the cameras erupted again, but Maya was already turning away, allowing Marcus to guide her toward the waiting vehicle. 4:47 p.m. Eastern Time. In the back of the black SUV, Maya finally broke down. The sobs came without warning, shaking her entire body as Marcus held her, and Zoe watched with confused concern. "I held it together," Maya gasped between cries. "The whole time I held it together. I couldn't let them see me weak. I couldn't give them the satisfaction." "You were incredible," Marcus said, stroking her hair. "You were stronger than anyone should have to be. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you weren't who you are. If I was just another passenger, they would have dragged me off in handcuffs, Marcus, with our baby, and everyone would have believed I deserved it. But that's not what happened. It happens every day to other people. That's what kills me. Victoria Sterling didn't just start being racist today. She's been doing this for years, and the company protected her. Your company." The accusation hung in the air between them. Marcus didn't flinch from it. "You're right," he admitted. "Skywave failed. The systems I trusted failed. The people I relied on failed. That's on me. You didn't know. I should have known. I'm the CEO. These complaints cross desks that report to me. Settlements were paid with company money. The culture that allowed Victoria Sterling to thrive was a culture I created." Maya wiped her eyes, looking at her husband with new appreciation for his willingness to accept responsibility. "What are you going to do about it?" "Everything. I'm going to tear it all down and rebuild it, starting tonight." 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time. They arrived at Skywave's Atlanta headquarters to find chaos. The building was surrounded by news vans and protesters who had gathered after seeing Sophia's live stream. Signs read, "Justice for Maya," and "Skywave New," and "Fire them all." Inside, the executive floor was in full crisis mode. Board members had flown in from across the country. Lawyers were huddled in conference rooms. PR teams were drafting and redrafting statements. Marcus strode through the hallways with Maya beside him, Zoe now being watched by a trusted assistant in a nearby office. Every employee they passed looked terrified. "David Chen," Marcus said to his executive assistant. "Where is he? Conference room B, sir. He's been there since we called the emergency meeting." "Good. He can stay there until security escorts him out." They entered the main boardroom where 7 people sat around a massive table. The VP of Human Resources, David Chen, was among them, his face pale and sweating. "Marcus," the board chairman said, rising to his feet, "we've reviewed everything. The situation is worse than we initially understood. Tell me." 17 flight attendants with active discrimination complaints, 43 settlements paid out over the past decade totaling over $12 million, all buried, all sealed with NDAs, all approved by HR leadership. Marcus turned to David Chen. You signed off on every one of these settlements. Chen's voice trembled. I was following the guidance of legal counsel. We were advised that settlements were more cost-effective than litigation. Cost-effective? Maya stepped forward, her voice sharp. You decided it was cheaper to pay off victims than to fire racists. Mrs. Thompson, with all due respect, don't. Maya cut him off. Don't you dare talk to me about respect. You protected Victoria Sterling for 5 years. You buried 3 complaints against her. You promoted her twice while she was discriminating against passengers, and today she slapped me in front of 80,000 live stream viewers. Chen had no response. Marcus spoke with cold finality. David, your employment with Skywave Airlines is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. You'll be hearing from our legal team regarding potential civil liability. You can't do this, Chen protested, rising from his chair. I have a contract. I have rights. Your contract includes a morality clause that you violated repeatedly. Your rights don't extend to covering up discrimination. Get out of my building. Security officers stepped forward, and David Chen was escorted from the room without another word. Who else? Marcus demanded, turning back to the board. The chairman slid a folder across the table. 6 other executives were copied on settlement documents. They all knew. They all stayed silent. Fire them, tonight, before the press conference. Marcus, some of these people have been with the company for over a decade, and they spent that decade enabling discrimination. I don't care about their tenure. I care about doing what's right. Fire them all. 5:52 p.m. Eastern Time. Maya stood in a private office preparing for the press conference. A makeup artist had covered the mark on her cheek, but Maya stopped her. Leave it visible. Ma'am, I want people to see what she did to me. I'm not hiding it. The makeup artist nodded and stepped back. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Martinez, the woman who had called her during the flight. We're up to 47 former passengers who've experienced similar discrimination on Skywave flights. We're organizing a class action lawsuit. Are you still willing to help? Maya typed back immediately. Yes, whatever you need. We're going to change this industry. Another text came in, this one from Sophia Martinez. Mrs. Thompson, my live stream footage has been viewed 47 million times. Every major news network is running segments. Victoria Sterling's mugshot is everywhere. You did this. You made people see. Maya stared at the number. 47 million views. In just a few hours, her worst moment had become one of the most watched videos in internet history. Her hands were shaking when Marcus knocked on the door. It's time. 6:00 p.m. Eastern Time. The press conference was held in Skywave's main auditorium. Every seat was filled with reporters, and dozens more stood along the walls. Cameras from every major network were trained on the podium. Marcus spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of corporate responsibility. This afternoon, my wife Maya Thompson was physically assaulted by a Skywave Airlines flight attendant while boarding a flight from Chicago to Atlanta. She was holding our 6-month-old daughter Zoe at the time of the assault. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The flight attendant, Victoria Sterling, has been terminated and arrested. She is facing federal assault charges. The captain who supported her actions, Robert Hayes, has been suspended and will not fly for Skywave again. Marcus paused, his expression hardening. But this isn't just about 2 employees. In the hours since this incident, we have uncovered a systematic pattern of discrimination cover-ups at the highest levels of our company. 43 discrimination complaints were settled secretly over the past decade. Victims were paid to sign non-disclosure agreements. Perpetrators were protected and even promoted. Gasps from the assembled reporters. Tonight I am announcing the immediate termination of 7 senior executives who participated in this cover-up, including our Vice President of Human Resources. Their names will be released to the media within the hour. The room erupted with questions, but Marcus held up his hand. I'm not finished. Effective immediately, Skywave Airlines is implementing the Thompson Protocol, named in honor of my wife's courage. This protocol mandates identity verification before any passenger can be removed from an aircraft. It requires body cameras for all crew interactions with passengers. It establishes an independent review board with full authority to investigate discrimination complaints. And it releases all victims from their non-disclosure agreements, allowing them to speak publicly about their experiences. Marcus stepped aside and gestured toward Maya. My wife would like to address you directly. Maya approached the podium, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. 12 hours ago, I was slapped across the face for the crime of being a black woman in first class. The flight attendant who hit me assumed I didn't belong there. She assumed I had stolen my ticket. She assumed my husband was just some baby daddy who couldn't help me. She let the words land. She was wrong about all of it. But here's what haunts me. What if she had been right? What if I wasn't married to the CEO? What if I was just another passenger without power or connections? I would have been dragged off that plane in handcuffs. My baby would have been traumatized, and everyone would have gone back to their lives believing I deserved it. Maya's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. Victoria Sterling didn't slap me because I did anything wrong. She slapped me because she looked at my face and decided I was less than human. She's been making that decision about passengers for 15 years, and my husband's company paid millions of dollars to keep her victims quiet. She turned to look directly at Marcus, then back at the cameras. That ends today, not because I'm special, not because I'm married to someone powerful, but because no one should have to be special to be treated with dignity. The room was completely silent. I'm announcing the creation of the Thompson Foundation for Passenger Equity. This foundation will provide legal support, financial assistance, and advocacy for anyone who experiences discrimination during air travel. My husband and I are personally committing $10 million to launch this initiative, and we're calling on every airline in the industry to match our contribution. Maya stepped back from the podium. For a moment, there was only stunned silence. Then the room exploded with applause. Reporters, camera operators, even the security guards were clapping. It was the most unexpected sound Maya had heard all day. 6:34 p.m. Eastern Time. The questions went on for nearly an hour. Maya answered every one of them with unflinching honesty. Mrs. Thompson, do you believe Skywave can actually change? I believe change is possible when leadership commits to it genuinely. My husband has fired 7 executives tonight. He's implementing protocols that will fundamentally alter how this airline operates. Words are meaningless without action, and we're taking action. Will you sue Victoria Sterling personally? That's a matter for our legal team. What I can tell you is that Victoria Sterling will face the full consequences of her actions. Federal assault charges carry serious penalties. How is your daughter doing after this ordeal? Maya's voice softened. Zoe is too young to understand what happened. She'll grow up knowing that her parents fought for justice. I hope that when she's old enough to watch this footage, she'll be proud of how we responded. Do you have a message for other people who've experienced discrimination? Maya leaned into the microphone. Speak up. Document everything. Don't let anyone convince you that your dignity doesn't matter, and know that you're not alone. There are 47 million people who watched what happened to me today, and the vast majority of them are on your side. 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. After the press conference, Maya and Marcus retreated to a private office. The adrenaline was wearing off, and Maya felt exhausted beyond words. The board is talking about making you a formal executive, Marcus said. They want to put you in charge of the new passenger equity division. Maya shook her head. I don't want a corporate title. I want to work with the foundation. I want to help people directly. Whatever you want. You've earned the right to choose your own path. Maya's phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but she answered anyway. Mrs. Thompson. This is Detective Sarah Morrison with Chicago PD. I'm calling to inform you that Victoria Sterling made a statement during her booking. What kind of statement? She's claiming that she was following unofficial company guidance to discourage certain passengers from flying first class. She says she was trained to do what she did. Maya's blood ran cold. She's saying Skywave taught her to discriminate. That's her claim. We're investigating. The line went dead, and Maya looked at Marcus with horror in her eyes. Victoria Sterling is saying she was trained to do this, that it was company policy. Marcus's face went white. That's impossible. But someone did. Someone in your company taught flight attendants to target minority passengers, and we just fired 7 executives without finding out who created this system. The victory of the press conference suddenly felt hollow. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. We need to investigate everything, Maya said. Every training manual, every memo, every unofficial policy. If what Victoria is saying is true, this goes deeper than we ever imagined. Marcus was already reaching for his phone. I'm calling our legal team. We're going to tear this company apart until we find the truth. And if the truth destroys Skywave, Marcus met her eyes with fierce determination. Then we build something better from the ashes. Outside the office window, Maya could see the protesters still gathered below their signs, illuminated by television lights. They were chanting her name, demanding justice, believing that change was finally possible. She hoped they were right. But Victoria Sterling's accusation echoed in her mind. Trained to do this, following company guidance. The woman who had slapped her might be a monster, but she might also be a symptom of something far worse, hiding in the shadows of corporate culture. And Maya was going to find out which one it was, no matter what it cost. Day 2, 8:17 a.m. Eastern Time. Maya hadn't slept. Victoria Sterling's accusation kept replaying in her mind like a broken record. Trained to do this, following company guidance. The words felt like poison seeping through everything she thought she knew about her husband's company. Marcus found her in their home office, surrounded by printed documents and half-empty coffee cups. Zoe was sleeping peacefully in her nursery, monitored by a baby camera on Maya's desk. "You've been up all night," Marcus said quietly. "I found something." Maya held up a folder thick with papers. "Training materials from 2019. Look at page 47. Marcus took the folder and began reading. His face changed with each line moving from confusion to disbelief to horror. "This can't be real. It's real. Flight attendants are encouraged to use discretion when passengers appear inconsistent with first-class profiles. Verification protocols may be enhanced for individuals who do not match expected passenger demographics." Who wrote this? The signature at the bottom belongs to Richard Calloway, former VP of Operations. He left the company 3 years ago. Marcus slammed the folder down. "We need to find him. Today." "I already tracked him down. He's working as a consultant for Atlantic Airways now. I have his contact information. You should be resting. You should be recovering from what happened." Maya stood up, her exhaustion masked by determination. "I will rest when we find everyone responsible for creating a system that taught Victoria Sterling to treat people like me as criminals." 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time. Richard Calloway agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a private conference room at the Atlanta Marriott. The former Skywave executive looked nervous the moment he walked through the door. "Marcus, Mrs. Thompson." He nodded at each of them, his hands fidgeting with a leather briefcase. "I saw the news. Terrible situation." "Sit down, Richard." Marcus's voice carried no warmth. Calloway sat. Maya slid the training manual across the table. "Did you write this?" Calloway glanced at the document and immediately looked away. "That was a long time ago." "Did you write it?" "I supervised its development. I didn't write every word personally." "But you approved language instructing flight attendants to treat certain passengers differently based on how they looked." "It wasn't meant to be discriminatory. It was a security measure. After 9/11, there was pressure to—" "Don't!" Maya's voice cut like a blade. "Don't you dare hide behind national security. This document specifically mentions passenger demographics and expected profiles. That's profiling. That's discrimination. And you know it." Calloway's composure cracked. "Look, I did what I was told to do. The direction came from above me." Marcus leaned forward. "Above you? You reported directly to the CEO. Are you saying my predecessor authorized this?" "I'm saying that the culture at Skywave wasn't created by any one person. It evolved over decades. Everyone played a role. Everyone looked the other way. Including you." "Including me, yes. I'm not proud of it, but I had a family to support. I had a mortgage. I couldn't afford to be the one person who stood up and got fired for it." Maya shook her head slowly. "So instead you created training materials that taught hundreds of flight attendants to treat people like me as suspects. And when complaints came in, the company paid them off. And when Victoria Sterling slapped me while I held my baby, it was the logical conclusion of everything you helped build." Calloway's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I am truly sorry." "Your apology means nothing to the 47 passengers who are currently organizing a class action lawsuit. Your apology means nothing to the victims who signed NDAs and have lived in silence for years. Your apology means nothing to my daughter, who watched her mother be assaulted." "What do you want from me?" Marcus answered. "We want you to testify, on record, about everything you know. Every person who contributed to this culture, every decision that prioritized profit over people. If I do that, I'll never work in aviation again. If you don't do that, Maya replied coldly, we'll subpoena you anyway, and the story will be that you refused to cooperate until you were forced. Your choice. Calloway stared at the table for a long moment. When he looked up, his expression had changed from defensive to defeated. I'll testify. But you should know this goes higher than David Chen or those 7 executives you fired. This goes to people who are still in positions of power across the industry. Names, Marcus demanded. We need names. 11:23 a.m. Eastern Time. The list Richard Calloway provided contained 23 names, current executives at 6 different airlines, board members, industry lobbyists, a web of people who had created and maintained discriminatory practices across commercial aviation for over 2 decades. Maya stared at the list in disbelief. This is an industry-wide conspiracy. It was never explicitly coordinated. Marcus explained, his voice heavy. But the same consultants worked with multiple airlines. The same training philosophies spread through the industry. The same settlement strategies were adopted everywhere. So Victoria Sterling wasn't an outlier. She was the product of a system that exists at every major carrier. Yes, Maya's phone rang. It was Rebecca Martinez. Maya, we have a problem. 3 of the women in our group received cease and desist letters this morning from Skywave's former legal counsel. They're threatening to enforce the NDAs. They can't do that. Marcus announced that all NDAs are voided. The letters are dated before that announcement. The former legal team is arguing that the victims violated their agreements before they were officially released. Maya's jaw tightened. That's retaliation, pure and simple. Who sent the letters? A law firm called Harrison & Associates. The partner who signed them is named William Drake. Maya ended the call and immediately turned to Marcus. William Drake at Harrison & Associates is sending cease and desist letters to discrimination victims. He's trying to silence them before they can join the lawsuit. Drake was Skywave's outside counsel for 15 years. We severed ties with his firm last night. But he still has confidential information. He still has copies of every NDA, and he's using them to intimidate people. Marcus grabbed his phone. I'm calling our current legal team. We need to file for an injunction immediately. That's not enough. Maya was already moving toward the door. I'm going to meet with Rebecca's group personally. They need to know we're fighting alongside them, not just making announcements from corporate headquarters. 12:47 p.m. Eastern Time. The meeting took place at a community center in downtown Atlanta. 15 women had gathered, all former Skywave passengers who had experienced discrimination and been paid to stay silent. Rebecca Martinez stood at the front of the room, her face showing the strain of organizing a movement while fighting legal threats. When Maya walked through the door, the room fell silent. Mrs. Thompson, Rebecca said, surprise evident in her voice. We didn't expect you to come in person. I should have come sooner. Maya took a seat among the women, not at the front of the room, but among them as an equal. Tell me everything, every story, every experience. I want to hear all of it. For the next 2 hours, Maya listened. She heard about flight attendants questioning the validity of tickets. She heard about security being called for passengers who had done nothing wrong. She heard about settlements that came with gag orders and threats of legal action if anyone spoke publicly. She heard about children who had witnessed their parents being humiliated. She heard about careers damaged and reputations destroyed. She heard about the lasting psychological trauma that no amount of settlement money could repair. By the time the last woman finished speaking, Maya was crying openly. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry this happened to you. And I'm sorry that my husband's company was responsible for so much of it. A woman named Patricia Williams, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. Mrs. Thompson, you're different from us. You have power. You have resources. When they came for you, you could fight back. We couldn't. I know, and that's why I'm here, to tell you that you're not alone anymore. The Thompson Foundation is officially launching with $10 million. Every person in this room will have access to legal representation at no cost. We're going to fight Harrison & Associates. We're going to fight every attempt to silence you, and we're going to win. Rebecca stepped forward. How can you be sure we'll win? Because the entire world is watching. Because 47 million people saw what happened to me, and they're not going to let this story fade away. Because companies like Skywave and law firms like Harrison and Associates are about to learn that the cost of discrimination is far higher than they ever imagined. 2:34 p.m. Eastern Time. Maya emerged from the community center to find a crowd of reporters waiting. Word had leaked that she was meeting with discrimination victims, and the media had descended in force. Mrs. Thompson, are you planning to expand your lawsuit beyond Skywave? Mrs. Thompson, is it true that multiple airlines are implicated? Mrs. Thompson, William Drake released a statement calling the victims liars. Do you have a response? That last question made Maya stop. William Drake called the victims liars. A reporter held up his phone, showing a tweet from Drake's official account. He says the women are opportunists trying to exploit your situation for financial gain. He says the NDAs are legally binding, and anyone who violates them will face severe consequences. Maya felt something shift inside her. The exhaustion burned away, replaced by cold fury. Let me be very clear about something, she said, stepping toward the microphones. William Drake is a man who built his career protecting corporations from accountability. He spent 15 years helping Skywave bury discrimination complaints and silence victims. And now he's threatening women who finally have the courage to speak out. She paused, making sure every camera was focused on her face. Mr. Drake, I want you to hear this directly. You are not going to intimidate these women. You are not going to enforce NDAs that were designed to cover up illegal activity. And if you continue to threaten the members of our coalition, I will personally ensure that your firm faces investigation for obstruction of justice. The reporters erupted with questions, but Maya was already walking toward her vehicle. Marcus was waiting inside his phone, pressed to his ear. That was the Department of Justice, he said as Maya climbed in. They're opening a formal investigation into discriminatory practices across the airline industry. They want to interview us tomorrow. Good. The bigger this gets, the harder it becomes to bury. Maya, there's something else. Victoria Sterling's lawyer just contacted us. She wants to make a deal. 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Victoria Sterling looked different without her uniform. Seated in an orange jumpsuit in a federal holding facility, the woman who had slapped Maya with such confidence now appeared small and frightened. Maya hadn't wanted to come. The thought of facing her attacker made her physically ill. But Victoria's lawyer had promised information that could expose the full extent of the conspiracy, and Maya knew she couldn't pass up the opportunity. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not here to forgive you, Maya replied flatly. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for you to understand what I'm about to tell you. Then talk. Victoria took a shaky breath. I was wrong. What I did to you was wrong. But I didn't wake up one day and decide to discriminate against passengers. I was shaped into what I became. That's not an excuse. No, it's an explanation. When I started at Skywave 15 years ago, I was taught by senior crew members that certain passengers needed extra attention. They called it security awareness. They said it was about keeping everyone safe. Victoria's eyes met Maya's for the first time, but it was never about safety. It was about control. It was about making sure that first class looked a certain way. Senior crew would point out passengers who didn't fit the profile and teach newer attendants how to create situations that would justify removal. You're saying this was systematically taught? Every day, for 15 years, I watched colleagues do exactly what I did to you, and they were praised for it. They were promoted. The passengers who complained were paid off, and we never heard about them again. Maya felt sick. You could have stopped at any point. You could have refused. I know, and that's why I'm here. I made choices. Terrible choices. I became someone I never wanted to be, and when I saw you sitting there with your baby, something in me just snapped. I saw everything I had been taught to hate, and I acted on it. You didn't just act on it. You enjoyed it. I saw your face when you hit me. You were proud. Victoria broke down sobbing. I know. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand how I became that person. Maya watched her former attacker cry and felt nothing but cold resolve. What information do you have that can help us? Victoria wiped her eyes. There are recordings. Internal meetings where discrimination strategies were discussed openly. I kept copies because I thought they might protect me someday if things went wrong. Where are these recordings? On an encrypted drive at my apartment. My lawyer can arrange access. But Maya, there are things on those recordings that go beyond Skywave. Industry conferences, training seminars, conversations with executives from other airlines. You're talking about evidence of industry-wide coordination. Yes, and if you release it, it will destroy careers. It will bring down people who are far more powerful than David Chen or Richard Calloway. Maya leaned forward. Good. 5:52 p.m. Eastern Time. The encrypted drive contained 47 audio files and over 200 documents. Maya and Marcus sat in their legal team's conference room as the files were decrypted and organized. The first recording made Marcus go pale. "That voice," he said. "That's Howard Mitchell, the current CEO of Atlantic Airways. He's discussing how to handle minority passengers who complain about service." "He's not just discussing it," one of the lawyers noted. "He's providing specific strategies for discrediting complainants and minimizing settlements." The second recording was worse. Industry executives laughing about a passenger who had been removed from a flight for reading while black. Actually laughing as if discrimination was entertainment. The third recording revealed coordination between legal teams at multiple airlines to standardize NDA language and settlement amounts. They had created a system to ensure that no single airline paid more than others, treating discrimination settlements like routine business expenses. By the 10th recording, Maya had to leave the room. She stood in the hallway, her back against the wall, trying to control her breathing. Marcus found her there minutes later. "I'm sorry," he said. "I had no idea it was this deep." "How could you not know you're the CEO?" "Because I trusted the wrong people. Because I believed what I was told. Because I was so focused on growth and profit that I never looked closely at the human cost." Maya turned to face him. "Do you understand now why I couldn't just accept an apology and move on? Why I had to push for more?" "Yes, I understand completely. These recordings are going to destroy your industry. Stock prices will crash. Companies will face billions in liability. People you've known for decades will go to prison." "I know. Are you ready for that?" Marcus took her hands in his. "I married you because you made me want to be better than I was. You've always pushed me to see beyond profit margins and market share. This is my chance to prove that I can be the man you believed I could be, even if it costs you everything. Even then, because some things matter more than money. You matter more, Zoe matters more, and the truth matters more." 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The decision was made to release the recordings in phases, starting with evidence directly related to Skywave and expanding to industry-wide coordination over the following days. The first batch hit the internet at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Within 30 minutes, Atlantic Airways stock dropped 12%. Howard Mitchell released a statement denying any wrongdoing, which only accelerated the collapse when people compared his denial to his own voice on the recordings. Within an hour, the Department of Justice expanded their investigation to include 6 additional airlines. Within 2 hours, Congress announced emergency hearings on discrimination in commercial aviation. Maya watched the chaos unfold from the Skywave headquarters, Zoe sleeping peacefully in her arms. The world was burning, and she had lit the match. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia Martinez. "Mrs. Thompson, the video of you at the press conference now has 93 million views. You're trending in 47 countries. People are calling this the most important civil rights moment of the decade." Maya typed back, "It's not about me. It's about everyone who was silenced before me." Sophia's response came immediately. "That's exactly why it matters." Outside, protesters had gathered again, but their signs had changed. No longer just justice for Maya, but justice for everyone. The movement had grown beyond one incident, beyond one airline, beyond one woman's experience. Rebecca Martinez called with an update. "We're up to 112 victims who want to join the coalition, and that's just from Skywave. We're getting contacted by passengers from every major carrier." "Can your legal team handle that volume?" "With the Thompson Foundation's support, yes. Maya, this is going to change everything. Every airline in the country is going to have to reckon with what they've done." Maya looked down at her sleeping daughter's face and felt something she hadn't felt since Victoria Sterling's palm had cracked across her cheek. Hope. The fire she had started was spreading, and she intended to let it burn until every last trace of the system that had created Victoria Sterling was reduced to ashes. Day 14, 9:00 a.m. Eastern Time. The federal courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Maya Thompson sat in the front row, Zoe on her lap as Victoria Sterling was led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. The woman who had slapped her with such confidence 2 weeks ago now walked with her head bowed, shoulders hunched, defeated, before the proceedings even began. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. Everyone stood. Maya felt Marcus's hand on her back steadying her. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when the system that had failed her would finally deliver justice. Judge Morrison took her seat and surveyed the courtroom. This case has attracted unprecedented public attention. I want to make something clear from the outset. This courtroom is not a stage for media spectacle. We are here to determine the facts and deliver a verdict based on evidence and law. She turned to Victoria Sterling. Ms. Sterling, you have been charged with federal assault, making false statements to federal officers and civil rights violations. How do you plead? Victoria's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client pleads guilty to all charges. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had expected a fight. She had prepared for a trial that could last weeks. Miss Sterling, Judge Morrison said, do you understand the implications of this plea? You are waiving your right to a trial. You are accepting responsibility for all charges. Victoria looked up for the first time, her eyes red and swollen. I understand, Your Honor. I did what they say I did. I assaulted Mrs. Thompson. I lied about it. I violated her civil rights. I'm guilty. The courtroom erupted. Reporters typed frantically on their phones. Camera flashes exploded despite the judge's earlier warning. Order. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. I will clear this courtroom if there is another outburst. Silence fell. Ms. Sterling, before I accept your plea, I want to hear from you directly. Why did you do what you did? Victoria stood slowly, her chains rattling. Your Honor, I was taught to see certain passengers as threats. I was rewarded for treating them differently. I spent 15 years in a system that told me I was doing the right thing. She paused, her voice breaking. But that's not an excuse. I made choices. I chose to believe the lies. I chose to act on my prejudice. And I chose to hit a woman who was holding her baby. She turned to face Maya directly. Mrs. Thompson, I know you don't want my apology. I know nothing I say can undo what I did. But I want you to know that seeing your face when I hit you, seeing the way you held your daughter and refused to break that image, has haunted me every night since. You showed more dignity in that moment than I've shown in my entire life. Maya said nothing. She simply held Zoe closer and waited. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. The court accepts your plea, Ms. Sterling. Sentencing will take place following victim impact statements and a review of evidence regarding the broader conspiracy you have helped expose. 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time. The prosecution's presentation lasted 3 hours. They played the recordings from Victoria's encrypted drive. They showed documents proving systematic discrimination at Skywave and 5 other major airlines. They called witnesses who had been silenced by NDAs and were now finally able to speak. Rebecca Martinez took the stand and described being removed from a flight for reading a book in Arabic. Her voice shook as she recounted how security had surrounded her, how other passengers had stared, how she had been interrogated for 4 hours before being released without charges. I signed an NDA because I was terrified, Rebecca testified. They told me if I talked about what happened, they would sue me for everything I had. I was a graduate student. I had no money. I couldn't fight them. Patricia Williams testified about being questioned for 30 minutes about her first-class ticket while white passengers boarded without a second glance. The flight attendant kept asking how I could afford it. She actually asked if I had stolen the ticket in front of my 12-year-old daughter. One by one, the victims told their stories. Each account was different in its details but identical in its core. Black passengers, Latino passengers, Muslim passengers, Asian passengers, all subjected to extra scrutiny. All treated as criminals until proven innocent. All paid to stay silent. By the time the last witness stepped down, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even Judge Morrison had to pause to compose herself. 12:34 p.m. Eastern Time. Maya was called to give her victim impact statement after lunch. She handed Zoe to Marcus and walked to the witness stand with deliberate calm. "Mrs. Thompson." The prosecutor said, "Please describe in your own words what happened on Flight 631 and how it has affected you." Maya took a breath and began. 2 weeks ago, I boarded a plane with my 6-month-old daughter. I was wearing comfortable clothes because I was traveling with an infant. I wasn't wearing designer labels or expensive jewelry. I looked like any other mother on any other flight. She paused, her eyes finding Victoria Sterling's. And because of how I looked, Victoria Sterling decided I didn't belong in first class. She decided my ticket must be fake. She decided my husband must be just some baby daddy who couldn't help me. And when my daughter cried because her ears hurt from the cabin pressure, Victoria Sterling slapped me across the face. The courtroom was completely silent. But here's what haunts me most. It's not the slap. It's not the humiliation. It's the applause. When Victoria hit me, passengers clapped. They cheered for her. They thought she was a hero for putting me in my place. Maya's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. I keep thinking about all the other mothers who have been in my position. Mothers who didn't have a CEO husband. Mothers who didn't have cameras recording. Mothers who were dragged off planes while their children screamed and no one cared. She turned to address the entire courtroom. Victoria Sterling didn't create the system that taught her to hate people like me, but she chose to participate in it. She chose to believe that some passengers deserved dignity and others didn't, and she chose to assault me while I held my baby. Maya looked directly at Victoria again. I don't forgive you. I may never forgive you, but I hope that your testimony helps dismantle the system that created you. I hope that other flight attendants see what happened to you and choose differently. And I hope that someday my daughter can fly on an airplane without anyone questioning whether she belongs. She stepped down from the witness stand and returned to her seat. Marcus wrapped his arm around her, and she finally allowed herself to lean into him. 1:15 p.m. Eastern Time. The prosecution called their final witness, Richard Calloway, the former VP of Operations, who had authored the discriminatory training materials. "Mr. Calloway," the prosecutor began, "you have agreed to testify in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Please describe for the court how Skywave Airlines systematically trained its employees to discriminate against minority passengers." Calloway spent the next 2 hours detailing the conspiracy. He named names, he described meetings, he explained how settlement amounts were calculated and how NDAs were used to ensure silence. "We called it profile management," Calloway testified. "The goal was to create an atmosphere in first class that made certain passengers uncomfortable enough to voluntarily downgrade or avoid flying with us altogether. And this was explicitly about race." Not explicitly, the language was always careful. We talked about passenger profiles and security indicators, but everyone understood what we meant. We meant Black passengers, Latino passengers, anyone who didn't look like they belonged in first class. Who authorized these policies? Calloway named 7 executives at Skywave. He named 4 at Atlantic Airways. He named 3 at Pacific Air. The conspiracy stretched across the industry, involving dozens of people who had built their careers on systematic discrimination. "Mr. Calloway, why are you testifying today?" He looked toward Maya, "Because I watched the video of what Victoria Sterling did. I watched a mother get slapped while holding her baby. And I realized that I helped create the monster who did that. I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure everyone knows the truth." 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Judge Morrison called a recess before sentencing. Maya stepped outside the courtroom to find a crowd of supporters waiting. They cheered when they saw her holding signs that read, "Justice for Maya" and "End Airline Discrimination." Sophia Martinez pushed through the crowd, her phone still recording. "Mrs. Thompson, my viewers want to know how you're feeling right now." "I'm feeling hopeful," Maya said. "For the first time since this started, I actually believe things might change. The recordings have been viewed over 200 million times. Congress is holding emergency hearings next week. Airlines across the country are scrambling to revise their policies. You started a movement." "I didn't start anything. Victoria Sterling started it when she slapped me. I just refused to stay silent." Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Martinez. "Coalition now includes 847 victims from 12 airlines. Class action lawsuit officially filed this morning." Maya showed the message to Sophia. 847 people who were told to stay silent. 847 people who are finally being heard. That's the real story here, not me. 4:00 p.m. Eastern Time. The courtroom reconvened for sentencing. Victoria Sterling stood before Judge Morrison, her hands clasped in front of her, trembling visibly. "Ms. Sterling," the judge began, "you have pleaded guilty to federal assault, making false statements, and civil rights violations. These are serious crimes. Under normal circumstances, I would sentence you to the maximum penalty allowed by law." Victoria closed her eyes, bracing for the verdict. "However, your cooperation has been instrumental in exposing a conspiracy that extends far beyond your individual actions. The recordings you provided have led to federal investigations at 6 major airlines. Your testimony has helped hundreds of victims find their voices." Judge Morrison paused. "This court must balance justice with the recognition that you are both perpetrator and product of a corrupt system. You did terrible things, but you also helped ensure that others cannot do what you did. For the charge of federal assault, I sentence you to 18 months in federal prison. For making false statements, 6 months concurrent. For civil rights violations, an additional 12 months. Total sentence 30 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release." Victoria's shoulders shook with silent sobs. "Additionally, you are permanently banned from working in the aviation industry. You will pay restitution to Mrs. Thompson in the amount of $500,000, and you will perform 1,000 hours of community service focused on civil rights education upon your release." Judge Morrison looked at Victoria with something approaching pity. "Ms. Sterling, you have an opportunity that many people in your position never receive. You can emerge from this experience as a different person. You can use your story to help others avoid the path you took. That choice is yours." Victoria nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Your Honor. I won't waste this chance." Guards led her away. As she passed Maya, she paused for just a moment. Their eyes met. No words were exchanged. None were needed. 4:47 p.m. Eastern Time. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had grown to several thousand. Maya emerged with Marcus and Zoe to find a sea of faces waiting for her. Media cameras captured every moment. Drones circled overhead, broadcasting live to millions of viewers worldwide. "Mrs. Thompson," reporters shouted, "how do you feel about the verdict?" Maya approached the microphone, Zoe secure in her arms. "Justice was served today. Not perfect justice, but a beginning. Victoria Sterling will spend 30 months in prison for what she did to me. But more importantly, her testimony has exposed a conspiracy that affected thousands of innocent people." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "This isn't over. Congress will hold hearings next week. The Department of Justice is investigating 6 major airlines. The Thompson Foundation is supporting a class action lawsuit representing nearly 1,000 victims. The system that created Victoria Sterling is being dismantled piece by piece." "What's next for you personally?" Maya smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. "I'm going to take my daughter home. I'm going to hold my husband, and tomorrow I'm going to keep fighting, because there are still people out there who think they can discriminate without consequences. They're wrong." 6:00 p.m. Eastern Time. The Thompson family arrived home as the sun was setting. Maya carried Zoe to the nursery and gently placed her in the crib. The baby looked up at her mother with innocent eyes, unaware of everything that had happened since that moment on Flight 631. "You'll never remember any of this," Maya whispered. "But I hope when you're older you'll understand why I had to fight. I hope you'll live in a world where no one ever questions whether you belong somewhere. And if they do question it, I hope you'll have the courage to prove them wrong." Marcus appeared in the doorway. The foundation just received its first major donation, $20 million from an anonymous donor. They said they watched your testimony and wanted to help. $20 million, on top of our 10. That's $30 million to start. Enough to support victims, train lawyers, and push for legislative change. Maya felt tears forming again, but this time they weren't tears of pain. "It's actually happening. Everything we hoped for. Because of you. Because you refused to be silent. Because you turned the worst moment of your life into a movement that's changing an entire industry." She walked to him and let him hold her. For a long moment, they just stood there, drawing strength from each other. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," Maya said. "You would have found a way. You always do." 1 month later. Maya stood before the House Transportation Committee, prepared to deliver testimony that would shape aviation policy for decades to come. The hearing room was packed. Every major news network was broadcasting live. The Thompson Protocol was about to become federal law. Mrs. Thompson. The committee chair said, "Thank you for being here today. Your courage has inspired a national conversation about discrimination in commercial aviation. Please share your thoughts on the legislation before us." Maya looked at the assembled representatives, at the cameras, at the millions of Americans watching at home. "1 month ago, I was slapped by a flight attendant for the crime of being black in first class. Today I'm here to make sure that never happens to anyone else." She described the Thompson Protocol in detail. Mandatory identity verification before passenger removal, body cameras for all crew interactions, independent oversight boards, transparent reporting of discrimination complaints, severe penalties for retaliation against whistleblowers. "Some will argue that these measures are expensive," Maya said. "They'll say it's too much regulation. They'll claim that discrimination is already illegal and additional laws aren't necessary." She leaned into the microphone. "To those people I say this. The airline industry paid over $50 million in secret settlements over the past decade. They protected discriminatory employees. They silenced victims. They chose profit over people at every turn. The free market didn't solve this problem. Only legislation can." The committee voted unanimously to advance the bill. It would pass the full House the following week and the Senate the week after that. The president signed it into law on national television, with Maya Thompson standing beside him. 6 months later, Victoria Sterling was released from federal prison after serving 18 months with good behavior. She emerged to find the world completely changed. The Thompson Protocol was now law. Airlines had implemented sweeping reforms. The class action lawsuit had resulted in a $3 billion settlement distributed among over 2,000 victims. Maya received a letter from Victoria 1 week after her release. "Mrs. Thompson, I have spent 18 months thinking about what I did to you. I have replayed that moment thousands of times. The sound of my hand hitting your face, the way you held your daughter closer, the look in your eyes that told me you knew exactly who you were, even when I refused to see it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I have dedicated my remaining years to making sure no one else becomes what I became. I speak at schools about discrimination. I volunteer with civil rights organizations. I tell my story to anyone who will listen. You could have destroyed me. Instead, you gave me a chance to become someone better. I will never be able to repay that debt, but I will spend the rest of my life trying." Victoria Sterling. Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she placed it in a drawer and went to find her daughter. 2 years later, Zoe Thompson celebrated her 2nd birthday on a Skywave flight to visit her grandparents. She sat in first class, a princess crown on her head, surrounded by flight attendants who treated her like royalty. None of them knew who she was. None of them recognized Maya, who had deliberately dressed down for the trip. They simply saw a mother and daughter enjoying a flight together. And that was exactly the point. Maya watched Zoe wave at the clouds through the window and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The slap, the humiliation, the fight for justice, the movement that had changed an industry. "Mama," Zoe said, pointing at the clouds. "Pretty." "Yes, sweetheart, very pretty." A flight attendant approached with a warm smile. "Can I get you anything, ma'am? More juice for the little one?" "That would be wonderful, thank you." The flight attendant returned with apple juice and a coloring book for Zoe. No questions about whether Maya belonged in first class. No suspicious glances at her ticket. No assumptions about her baby daddy. Just dignity, just respect, just basic human decency. Marcus squeezed Maya's hand. "You did this. We did this. All of us. Every victim who spoke up, every witness who refused to stay silent, every person who demanded better. But you started it." Maya shook her head. "Victoria Sterling started it. I just finished it." She looked at her daughter, at the innocent joy on Zoe's face, at the world that was slightly more just than it had been 2 years ago. The Thompson Protocol had changed everything. Discrimination complaints at major airlines had dropped by 73%. Passenger removal rates for minorities had normalized to match overall averages. The industry that had once protected people like Victoria Sterling now held them accountable. But Maya knew the work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. There would always be people who looked at others and decided they didn't belong. There would always be systems that protected prejudice over justice. The difference was that now those people and those systems would face consequences. Real consequences. The kind that made others think twice before following the same path. Zoe fell asleep against Maya's shoulder as the plane began its descent. The little girl who had been at the center of a national incident would never remember any of it. She would grow up knowing only that her mother had fought for justice and won, and that was enough. Maya kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered the same words she had spoken 2 years ago in the darkest moment of her life. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's okay." This time it was true. Because Maya Thompson had taken the worst 5 minutes of her life and transformed them into a legacy that would protect millions of passengers for generations to come, she had proven that dignity is not negotiable, that silence is not safety, and that one woman with courage can change the world. The plane touched down smoothly. Zoe stirred but didn't wake. Maya gathered her things and prepared to disembark, holding her daughter close. As she walked off the aircraft, a young black flight attendant caught her eye and smiled with recognition. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson," she whispered.